The Legacy of the Japanese Sword, a tale of mastery and perfection. In the dead of night, flames dance in a dimly lit forge. The rhythmic sound of hammering echoes through the mountains as sparks illuminate the weathered face of a master swordsmith. He's performing a ritual that has remained virtually unchanged for over 1,000 years, the creation of what many consider the finest sword ever made, the Japanese katana. The year is 1389. In his workshop near Mount Fuji, the legendary swordsmith Masamune labors over what will become his masterpiece. Each strike of his hammer carries not just force, but centuries of accumulated wisdom. This is no mere weapon he's crafting. It's a fusion of art, science, and spiritual belief that will change the course of Japanese history. But what makes these blades so exceptional that even modern scientists are amazed by their perfection? How did Japanese swordsmiths achieve such extraordinary results with medieval technology? And why do these swords continue to captivate people worldwide, centuries after their creation? The story of the Japanese sword is a tale of obsession, innovation, and an almost supernatural attention to detail. It's a journey that begins not with steel but with iron sand, harvested from riverbeds and beach deposits. This special sand, known as tamahagane, contains precisely the right blend of elements needed to create the perfect sword. But transforming this humble material into a legendary blade requires a process so complex and demanding that it borders on alchemy. The swordsmith's day begins long before dawn. First, he must purify himself through ritual ablutions and prayers. For in Japanese tradition, the creation of a sword is as much a spiritual act as it is a physical one. The forge must be lit at precisely the right moment, with specific types of charcoal carefully arranged to achieve temperatures exceeding 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. As the tamahagane melts, the smith performs what appears to be a mystical dance, but is actually a precisely choreographed sequence of movements perfected over generations. He folds the steel again and again, sometimes up to 16 times, creating layers numbering in the millions. Each fold removes impurities and distributes carbon content evenly throughout the blade. This technique, developed centuries before electron microscopes existed, creates a metal structure so fine that modern metallurgists are still trying to fully understand it. But the most fascinating aspect of Japanese sword-making isn't just the technical precision. It's the philosophy behind it. Unlike European swords, which were often designed simply as weapons of war, the Japanese katana was considered a living entity, possessing its own spirit. This belief wasn't mere superstition. It profoundly influenced how these blades were created and used. Take, for example, the story of Muramasa, a 16th century swordsmith whose blades were said to be so sharp and bloodthirsty that they would cut innocent bystanders if left unsheathed. Legend has it that when tested, his swords would slice leaves floating downstream, but the leaves would first be cut in half before touching the blade. In contrast, leaves approaching Masamune's swords would either slip around the blade unharmed or be gently pushed away. This tale isn't just about sharpness. It's about the fundamental philosophy of what a sword should be, not just a tool of destruction, but an instrument of justice and protection. The creation process continues with the application of clay to the blade, a technique unique to Japanese sword-making. This clay coating, thicker along the spine and thinner along the edge, creates the distinctive wave pattern known as heimin during quenching. But more importantly, it produces a blade with a hard, sharp cutting edge and a more flexible spine, a combination that makes the Japanese sword nearly indestructible in battle. The quenching itself is perhaps the most crucial and dangerous step. The red-hot blade must be cooled at exactly the right speed in water kept at a precise temperature. Too hot or too cold, too fast or too slow, and months of work can be ruined in seconds. The blade can warp, crack, or even shatter explosively. Master smiths say they can hear the voice of the sword during this process, a high-pitched singing that tells them whether the quenching is successful. But what truly sets Japanese swords apart isn't just their construction, it's their testing. In medieval Japan, swords were tested on real human bodies, those of executed criminals. Official sword testers, called tameshigiri, would methodically test each blade's cutting ability on different parts of the body, recording their findings in detailed certificates that accompanied the sword. These certificates, some of which survive today, read like scientific documents, noting exactly how many bodies the sword could cut through in a single stroke. This obsession with perfection led to the rise of legendary swordsmiths whose names still evoke awe today. Among them, none is more revered than Goro Nyudo Masamune, often called the greatest swordsmith in history. Active in the late 13th to early 14th century, Masamune's blades were so exceptional that they were considered national treasures even during his lifetime, a status they retain to this day. But what made Masamune's sword so special? The answer lies in his revolutionary approach to metalworking. While other smiths of his time were creating serviceable blades, Masamune was experimenting with complex layering techniques that wouldn't be fully understood until the advent of modern metallurgy. His swords combined seemingly contradictory qualities. They were incredibly hard yet flexible, devastatingly sharp yet durable. The tale of the Honjo Masamune, perhaps his most famous creation, reads like a thriller spanning centuries. This sword passed through the hands of some of Japan's most powerful warriors, including several shoguns. Each transfer of ownership marked a pivotal moment in Japanese history. The blade was so important that it became one of the primary symbols of shogunal power, equivalent to a European crown jewel. Tragically, this priceless treasure disappeared after World War II, leading to one of the greatest mysteries in art history. But not all legendary swords were created equal. Enter Muramasa, the infamous swordsmith, whose blades were said to be cursed with an unquenchable thirst for blood. The story goes that a Muramasa blade would compel its wielder to draw blood before being resheathed, even if that meant the wielder had to cut themselves. This fearsome reputation led to the Tokugawa shogunate banning Muramasa blades after several tragic incidents involving the ruling family. The contrast between Masamune and Muramasa's works sparked one of Japan's most enduring legends. It's said that to test the quality of their blades, both swordsmiths suspended their swords in a small stream. Muramasa's blade cut everything that flowed past: leaves, fish, even the very air itself. When it was Masamune's turn, observers were puzzled to see that leaves flowed around his blade uncut, fish swam past unharmed, and the air remained undisturbed. A passing monk explained the profound difference. Muramasa's blade was indeed sharp, but it cut indiscriminately, while Masamune's blade knew what not to cut. It was the sword of a true samurai. This philosophical dimension of Japanese sword-making sets it apart from all other bladesmithing traditions. Each step in the creation process was imbued with deep symbolic meaning. The folding of the steel represented the purification of the soul. The clay coating applied before tempering symbolized the balance between strength and flexibility needed in life. Even the distinctive curve of the katana was said to mirror the arc of a falling cherry blossom, a reminder of both beauty and impermanence. The samurai understood this symbolism intimately. To them, the sword was far more than a weapon. It was a physical manifestation of their code of conduct, Bushido. A samurai's blade was considered to contain his soul, and the way he treated his sword reflected his character. This belief led to elaborate ceremonies and rituals surrounding the handling and maintenance of swords. One such ritual was the monthly maintenance routine known as Otsukigiri, or moon viewing maintenance. On the night of a full moon, samurai would disassemble their swords completely, clean each component, and carefully reassemble them. This wasn't just about preventing rust, it was a meditation on mortality and duty. The moon's reflection on the polished blade was said to reveal any impurity in both the steel and the wielder's spirit. This spiritual dimension extended to the actual forging process. Swordsmiths operated under strict religious protocols. They would abstain from certain foods, observe periods of fasting, and perform purification rites before beginning work. The forge itself was considered a sacred space, with small shrines often built nearby to honor the gods of metalworking. Some masters would spend days in meditation before attempting to forge particularly important blades. The relationship between swordsmith and blade was considered almost parental. Masters spoke of giving birth to swords rather than making them. They would spend months, sometimes years, on a single blade, knowing that their reputation, and possibly their legacy, would rest on its quality. This devotion led to innovations that still astonish modern scientists. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Japanese sword-making is that many of its secrets remained hidden from the Western world until relatively recently. It wasn't until the 1980s that metallurgists using electron microscopes began to understand the true complexity of these blades. What they discovered was astonishing. The steel in medieval Japanese swords had a carbon content and structure that rivaled modern high-tech alloys. The secret lay in that ancient folding process. By repeatedly folding and hammering the steel, Japanese swordsmiths created a laminated material with as many as 33,000 layers in a space no thicker than a quarter inch. This lamination, combined with the differential hardening technique, produced blades with an almost impossible combination of properties: extremely hard cutting edges backed by more flexible spines that could absorb enormous impact without breaking. The transition from wartime weapon to peacetime art form marks another fascinating chapter in the katana's history. As Japan entered the peaceful Edo period in the early 1600s, swords became increasingly ornate. Master craftsmen began focusing more on the aesthetic aspects of their blades, creating intricate patterns in the steel and elaborate fittings decorated with precious metals and stones. The Meiji Restoration of 1868 marked a turning point in Japanese sword history. As Japan rapidly modernized, the wearing of swords was banned, and many master swordsmiths found themselves without work. This could have meant the end of the tradition, but something remarkable happened instead. The skills were preserved, passed down in secret from master to apprentice, waiting for a time when they would be valued again. That time came in the mid-20th century, when the world began to recognize Japanese swords as supreme examples of metallurgical art. Today, there are about 300 licensed swordsmiths in Japan, each one dedicated to preserving and advancing this ancient craft. These modern masters still use traditional techniques, working in forges that would be recognizable to their ancestors from centuries ago. Recent studies have revealed that the traditional folding process creates a material structure similar to modern composite materials. The alternating layers of high and low carbon steel form a natural composite that combines incredible strength with remarkable flexibility. Even more surprisingly, the traditional clay coating process creates a complex microstructure that modern metallurgists are still trying to fully understand. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Japanese sword isn't its technical excellence, it's what it represents. In a world of mass production and planned obsolescence, these blades stand as testament to what humans can achieve when they dedicate themselves to absolute perfection. Each sword tells a story not just of metallurgical skill, but of patience, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Today, a new generation of enthusiasts is discovering the beauty and complexity of Japanese swords. Museums worldwide showcase these masterpieces, and contemporary artists draw inspiration from their perfect balance of form and function. As we look to the future, the legacy of the Japanese sword reminds us that true mastery knows no time limit. In an age of artificial intelligence and automated manufacturing, these hand-forged blades stand as proof that some things are worth doing the slow, hard way. For those who wish to learn more about these extraordinary creations, many Japanese museums offer special exhibitions where you can see legendary blades up close. The craft of the swordsmith continues to evolve, even as it honors its ancient roots, proving that some traditions never lose their edge. Thank you for watching this exploration of the Japanese sword. If you'd like to learn more about Japanese history and culture, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Your support helps us continue bringing these fascinating stories to life. Until next time, sayonara.